Hi, boys and girls. Hope you had a great spring break. I hope you enjoyed that nice weather and got out there and played. I wanted to ask you a question. Do you ever dream of things? Do you ever dream of something you'd like to be when you grow up, or what something would be like? I know I did when I was a little girl. If you have a dream that you're thinking of right now, type it in whenever you're finished watching the video. We would love to hear about that. Today I'm going to read you a book called Catching the Moon, a story of a young girl's baseball dream. And as you can tell, this sweet little girl right here, she loves baseball, and that is her dream, to play baseball all the time. This book is written by Crystal Hubbard and illustrated by Randy Duburk. Let's see what happens. Marcinia Lyle loved baseball. She loved the powdery taste of dust clouds as she slid through them. She loved the way the sun heated her hair as she crouched in the outfield, waiting for fly balls. And she loved the sting in her palm as a baseball slammed into it, right before tagging a runner out. If there was anything in the world better than baseball, Marcinia didn't know what it was. She dreamed of growing up to be a professional ball player so she could play all the time. I wish I knew why you liked baseball so much, Mama sighed as she gently washed Marcinia's hair. Marcinia shrugged. Mama often questioned Marcinia's interest in baseball, particularly when washing field dirt from her hair. It's just fun, Marcinia said, giving her mother the same response she always did. Playing dolls is fun, Mama said. Marcinia blew a puff of lather from her palm. Not as much fun as baseball. After Marcinia crawled into bed, Papa appeared in the doorway. What did you learn at school today? He asked. Marcinia thought for a moment. Some history? Papa crossed his arms. And how did your team do in the game after school? Harold got a triple in his first at-bat, said Clarence. Harold got a triple in his first at-bat, and Clarence tagged out 2 runners, Marcinia said eagerly. I struck out my first time at bat, but then I caught a deep fly ball that would have scored the tying run for the other team if I missed it. We won 11-10. Marcinia's smile gleamed like the noonday sun as she shared the details of her victory. We won the game, Marcinia said once more. And you also ripped another dress, Papa said dismayed. Then he kissed Marcinia's cheek and turned off the light, leaving her alone with moonlight and shadows of her dream of becoming a baseball player. The tiny house was still. Marcinia could almost hear her mother's needle and thread moving through the fabric as she sat at the kitchen table mending Marcinia's dress. After a while, Marcinia heard Papa's voice. I wish she would think about school as much as she did think about baseball. She wants to be a baseball player when she grows up, Mama said with a sad chuckle. I just want her to be happy. She'll be what every other girl in the neighborhood will be, Papa grumbled. A teacher, a nurse, or a maid, Mama said softly. I'm going to score 3 home runs tomorrow, Marcinia promised the darkness as she clapped her hands over her ears. I'm going to hit a home run, too. So they have different dreams for her. The next day after school, Marcinia went to the playground. The other girls stayed on the hardtop to play hopscotch, jump rope, or jacks. The boys were huddled on the mound, talking quietly. They cast excited glances at a man who was watching the field from the bleachers. Do you know who he is? Harold asked Marcinia as he joined the group. He tipped his head towards the man. That there is Mr. Gabby Street. He's running a baseball day camp this summer. Marcinia knew about Gabby Street. He was a manager for the St. Louis Cardinals. He had led his Cardinals to the National League pennant in 1930, and the Cardinals had topped that the next year by winning the 1931 World Series. What's he want? Marcinia asked. Kids for his baseball camp, Harold said. It's going to be right here on this field every day except Sunday. Sundays are game days. What's his cost? Marcinia asked. It's free, said Clarence. All you need is your own glove and baseball cleats, Harold added. Marcinia could hardly contain her excitement. She would do anything to be one of the players in Mr. Street's camp. That is the place for her, huh? That afternoon, Marcinia played with a purpose. She scooped grounders, catching them into her body to make sure they didn't bounce away. She slid into second, keeping low so she wouldn't be tagged. She kept her eyes on each pitch, waiting for a good one to send over the fence. She scored 3 runs and hit a homer. When Mr. Street approached the players after the game, Marcinia crowded in close so he could see her. "I just saw some good ball," Mr. Street said, smiling. "Who wants to come to my baseball camp and really learn to play this game?" Every hand went up. Mr. Street shook them all. He shook Marcinia's hand last. "You've got a good arm, little miss, and you run fast," he said, "but I don't take girls in my camp." Marcinia looked down so no one could see her disappointment. She began striking dust from her dress, so she was kind of like, "Marcinia's been playing ball with us since we were little kids," Harold told Mr. Street. "She's the only player who we got who ever steals bases," Clarence said. Marcinia was pleased that her friends had come to her defense, but Mr. Street didn't change his mind. As she walked home, she thought about how these very same boys had teased her when she first started playing baseball with them. But when they saw she could run, hit, and throw as well as they could, the teasing stopped. They had let her play. Marcinia decided to give Mr. Street a reason to change his mind. Every day Marcinia played baseball, and every day Mr. Street refused to invite her to his camp. Then came a day when Marcinia got tired of hearing him say, "I don't take girls in my camp." That day, when she was on third base in the 9th inning of a tie game, Marcinia decided to take the biggest chance in all baseball. She decided to steal home. When the pitcher drew back his arm to throw the ball to Harold, Marcinia launched into motion, and wow, that picture really shows her launching into motion. The catcher snared the pitch in his glove and ran toward Marcinia to tag her out. Marcinia doubled back toward third. When the catcher threw the ball back to the third baseman, Marcinia turned and bolted toward home plate. As the ball sailed above her head, Marcinia pumped her arms and knees harder. With the ball speeding toward home, Marcinia dropped her weight and slid into home plate. She had stolen home and scored the winning run. Wow. Think that'll change his mind? While her teammates celebrated her victory, Marcinia planted her hands on her hips and faced Mr. Street. "I am a baseball player," she said. "I want to learn to play this game as well as I can. May I come to your camp?" "Well, little miss, if you could steal home, you could probably do anything. You could probably do anything you set your mind to," Mr. Street said. "You can come to my camp as long as you have your equipment." Looks like the boys are happy about that. She's got some good friends out there. When Marcinia told her parents the good news about the camp that evening, her father was not pleased. "I don't like you acting like such a tomboy," he said with a snap of his evening paper. "Besides, you know we don't have money to spend on—" "The camp's free," Marcinia said excitedly. "Equipment isn't free," Papa said. "I have a glove," Marcinia said. "Harold gave me his old one." "You'll need cleats, and we don't have money for those," Papa added. "So unless you're prepared to get them yourself, I think you'll have to forget about this camp." With another snap of Papa's newspaper, Marcinia felt her dream move out of reach. Mr. Street was at the field the next time Marcinia played. Before the game, she mustered all of her strength to keep from crying. "Mr. Street," she said, "I can't come to your camp. I don't have cleats, and my father says we can't afford them. But thank you for inviting me." Although she was sad, Marcinia played as well as she always had. She loved baseball too much not to play with all her heart. That night, unable to sleep, Marcinia gazed through her window at the full moon glowing in the sky. It was so round and bright, like a brand new baseball. She reached to the floor and took up her baseball glove. She put it on and punched the pocket, as if the moon would drop into it, like so many fly balls had done before. Marcinia wondered sadly if Papa was right. Maybe girls didn't grow up to be ball players after all. But playing baseball was her dream, and Marcinia couldn't imagine doing anything else. Look at the moon. She's looking at the moon. She's imagining it being a baseball. The next day after school, Marcinia was the first one at the playing field. Mr. Street was already there, and he waved Marcinia over. "You're a good ball player, Marcinia," he said. "I want good ball players for my camp." He handed Marcinia a box, and he watched as she opened it. Her eyes widened as she pulled out a shoe with each hand. These weren't just any shoes. These were real baseball cleats. "Thank you, Mr. Street." Marcinia was so excited she could barely squeeze out the words. She hugged the shoes to her chest. They were even better than stealing home. I want to show you guys this picture. She is so excited. "Don't you have a game to play?" Mr. Street said, nodding toward the field. "Yes, I do," Marcinia replied happily. Her fingers flew as they unbuckled her street shoes and laced on her new cleats. They fit perfectly. She ran in them, she jumped in them, she caught and slid in them, and she hit a home run in them. After the game, the boys rushed to Mr. Street, talking over one another about the game. Marcinia lingered at home plate. She stared at her feet, proud of the new scuffs and smudges on her shoes. They had been a little stiff at first, but now that she had played a good game of baseball in them, the cleats were exactly the way she wanted them to be. Mr. Street excused himself from the crowd of boys. "I look forward to seeing you in camp," he said to Marcinia. She gave him a hopeful smile, kind of like. But Marcinia knew she still had one more person to convince before she could officially accept Mr. Street's invitation. She ran home and waited anxiously for her father to return from work. As soon as her father arrived, Marcinia showed him her new cleats. "Now, Marcinia, where did you get those shoes?" Papa asked sternly. "Mr. Street gave them to me," Marcinia said. "He wants me to come to his baseball camp." Papa looked down at Marcinia's baseball cleats, which were already scuffed and dusted with field dirt. "You must be a pretty good ball player for an important man like Mr. Street to buy you those shoes," he admitted. Then he smiled. "You know I don't like charity, but I reckon we can't give those shoes back in this state. I'll have to thank Mr. Street for his generosity when I take you down to that baseball camp." Marcinia could hardly believe her ears. Papa had agreed. Her chest filled with joy, and she threw her arms around her father, hugging him hard. "You'll see how good I am," she cried. Marcinia felt as proud and happy as if she had reached right up in the sky and caught the moon in her glove. She was on her way to becoming a real baseball player. She would make her dream come true. And that is the story, Catching the Moon. I love this book. I think it's a great book. You can always do everything you set your mind to. Remember that. So if there's something that you feel like is out of your reach, maybe not. Did you enjoy the story? What did you enjoy about it? Okay, we're going to switch gears now. We're going to talk about similes. And similes are when two things are compared using like or as. Similes are types of figurative language. And what figurative language is those are words that go beyond what the actual meaning of the words are. Writers use it to get their point across or to help the reader better understand what they're trying to say. Sometimes you have to use your imagination, or you have to be able to make connections with what you're trying to read in order to interpret what it is that the author is saying. But most of the time you've heard these things before, and these are really common things that a lot of people say. And you'll see what I mean in just a minute. I have 3 examples right here. All of them are comparing two things using like or as. And the first one says, "She is sweet as sugar." The next is, "I will sleep like a log tonight." And the third one says, we are like 2 peas in a pod. So let's look at the first one. She is as sweet as sugar. What do you think that means? Well, if we look at it the way it said, literally, she's as sweet as sugar, I would say that, well, she is a human lollipop. What do you think? Is that really what that means? If you're talking about somebody, are you going to say, oh, she is a sweet as sugar? No, not really. What you're really trying to say, or what the writer's really trying to say here, is that she is a very nice girl. She's kind. She's got a big heart. So that is what they're trying to say here, okay? So we're going to put that there just to show that, okay? Let's look at the next one. I will sleep like a log tonight. And if you know anything about cutting down trees, or you've ever seen it done, if you see a log lying there, it's not really doing a whole lot. It's just kind of like that, right? Well, what do you think? Does this mean I'm going to sprout some branches and turn into a big piece of wood and get into bed and just lay there all night? Not really, but I'm pretty tired. But what that really is trying to say here is that I'm going to sleep soundly all night long. I'm probably not going to move a whole lot. So if someone says to you, you slept like a log last night, well, that just means that you slept soundly. You didn't really wake up or stir. You just kind of slept all through the night. So that is what that means. All right, we are like 2 peas in a pod. Well, we know that peas come in, they come in a pod, which is a green thing, green encasement. Is that what we are? Me and you? Are we 2 peas in a pod? Sitting there, well, pretty cute, huh? But not really. That's not what they're looking for. They're referring to it, but what they're really wanting us to know is that we're best friends. That's more like it, right? 2 peas in a pod. And these 2 guys here, of course, they're in the pod together. That's how they were germinated, how they grow. But really what the person is trying, or what this sentence is trying to say, is that 2 peas in a pod means that 2 people are best friends. Okay? Now you're gonna try your hand at interpreting what some similes mean based on the book we just read. Let's look at these 2. The first one says, Marcinia's smile gleamed like the noonday sun. We know the noonday sun is pretty hot, right? That's when the sun has just come up and it's just very bright. Marcinia gazes through her window at the full moon glowing in the sky. It was so round and bright, like a brand new baseball. So what I would like for you to do for both of these is, in your reading journal, I would like for you to, you don't have to write these, but I would like for you to draw a quick picture for each one about what you think the author was trying to get across to you. Do you think that her smile was really like a noonday sun, really that big and bright? Or do you just think that she smiled very brightly? Here, do you think there was a brand new baseball up in the sky? I know when I was a child, if I got a brand new baseball, I would have been pretty happy, right? So think about that. You're going to draw a picture for each one and then write a sentence or 2 telling what the writer was trying to say when they made these statements. And if you would like to go back and watch the video again, you sure can, okay? So tomorrow we're going to go over this, and I'm going to show you what I have, my answers to this, and we're going to go over some of the vocabulary that is in this book. Okay? Have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.